When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Every day, just after our 10:30 newscast here on the Elias Macko Show, what do? We take a look at matters about getting from point A to point B for our daily In Transit segment. Today on In Transit, because we're in a national show frame of mind as we broadcast across the country, as here in Quebec we work while the rest of Canada has a day off, today we figured what we really should talk about is something that matters to all Canadians, and I'm talking about high-speed rail. And think about it, right? From Windsor, Ontario to Quebec City, Quebec, there have been calls forever to give this country what it deserves, what so many of the big boy nations around the world have, high-speed rail. And there are more and more voices adding to this call. Now, you may know that the federal government and the Transport Minister, Omar Al-Gabr, for the longest time have been on the whole, we're going to get high-frequency rail, not high-speed, high-frequency rail. It's a way for them to make you think that we're getting fancy train service when we're actually not. Now, on Friday, we heard an update that Omar Al-Gabr, the Transport Minister, now says the government is open to making portions of that corridor high speed. Not the whole thing, but portions. I guess that's progress. Now let's talk to some of the other political calls, some of the other people making calls for this country to go full in on high-speed rail. Craig Sauvé is a Montreal City Councillor, and he's part of a growing number of local politicians who are standing up to this country being slow when it comes to rail and saying, let's go high-speed. Craig's on the line. Hi, Craig.
Hi.
Great to talk to you here. Now, let's get into this side of thing. I keep hearing from mayors and provincial officials here in Quebec. We had our provincial transport minister saying, hey, we need high-speed rail. Tell me about what you and other councillors across this country are saying when it comes to high-speed rail.
Well, you made such a great case for it in the intro, Elias. I don't know where I can add on, but at City Council today and tomorrow in Montreal, I have a motion with my colleague Serge Sasseville calling for Montreal to officially adopt a position where we demand high-speed passenger rail in the sort of Quebec-Toronto corridor, as we call it. As you mentioned, the Minister of Transport in Quebec is calling for it, so the Quebec government, the Mayor of Laval, the Mayor of Quebec City, and now Montreal is poised to position itself in favor. So we're developing a consensus for high-speed rail. And when we say high-speed rail, our listeners should imagine, getting between Montreal and Toronto now by rail is about 5 hours, a bit more. Sometimes it's delays. With high-speed rail, we could talk two and a half hours, 2.25 hours. It's a big difference, and that kind of difference is huge for quality of life. It's huge for economic and cultural linking with the two major metropolises of Canada, and obviously the other cities that would probably be covered in between. Quebec City being connected to it. I think this is something where Canada has to move forward. We're the only G7 nation that doesn't have high-speed rail. And let me tell you, other nations, Uzbekistan has it, Indonesia has it, they're building it in the USA. We're moving forward all over, and Canada has to get on board with it because it's the future.
So, and you mentioned before consensus, right? There seems to be consensus here. But you know where there's not the consensus? Ottawa, right? The part of Ottawa, the federal government, the people that need to be leading this charge are not doing such a thing. So why do you think that is, Craig? Why has there been such a hesitance, in your opinion, from Ottawa about connecting the country via rail?
I think that over the last decade or so, more and more the consensus has been built to understand that public transport investment is so good for economic development. But it took a long time for people to come to this realization. And so intercity rail, if it's high speed, yeah, it's a bit more expensive, but the investment will just be worth it in terms of economic development. We're talking tourism, we're talking culture. And so I think Ottawa has perhaps been worried that the price tag would be higher, and that's what they say in public. But nice things cost money, it's true. How is it that we're the only G7 nation that hasn't made this investment? Other nations have lakes and they have mountains where they need tunnels. We could do this here. So I think the price tag was the issue, but I hope listeners know that Ottawa is presently looking at a project, as you mentioned, for high frequency, which means more trains, but not faster trains, that would cost somewhere up to $6 to $12 billion. So they're ready to put serious money down. And what we're saying in Quebec is put a little bit more and get the high-speed rail. We want to compete with the more expensive, domestic flights. We want to compete with the long car drive. We want to make it something that will really be cheaper and better and, cleaner as well.
We're talking about high-speed rail in Canada with Craig Sauvé, Montreal City Councillor, behind a push in Montreal to get high-speed rail in that Toronto-Quebec City corridor here. So Craig, listen, you brought up the high-frequency rail, right? Do you have, it seems like when the federal government talks about this, they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. Just by coming out, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do high-frequency rail in this country, right? It was almost like they were trying to fool us, right? And then you look into the details, it would still be 4.5 hours to go from Montreal to Toronto, right? That's but it's high-frequency. And now we heard on Friday, right, the transport minister say, but portions will be quote-unquote high-speed. Do you think they're serious about it, or that they're just trying to fool people that they care about high-speed travel?
I think that they were caught a bit off guard by the push from the political and economic class of Quebec that has been pushing for high-speed rail. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Ontario, political and economic class and transport officials start to say they want high-speed rail too. I think, like I said, the federals were trying to go with a sort of less expensive but still very expensive option. And I think just the sheer economics of it, saying that how could we spend billions of dollars on rail and it's not that much more faster? Let's spend a bit more and make it faster. So Ottawa seems to be caught off guard. What I'm sensing is it's a good signal that perhaps they're listening to these people, to all these leaders that are saying, hey, high speed is the way to go. The Windsor-Quebec corridor is the densest part of Canada in terms of population. The growth is going to be there too. It just makes sense in this corridor. So I think Ottawa is perhaps listening, and I think the push that we're doing today in City Council in Montreal, and that perhaps other councils and other parliaments will do, it's going to be important to really get Ottawa fully on board with high-speed passenger rail.
Craig, what about the route? I know there's been also some debate about what route it should take. If you're going to connect Montreal to Toronto with high-speed rail, does it do, and again, this high-frequency rail will take a bit of a circuitous route. Another reason why it still clocks in at 4.5 hours, right, is the route they choose to take. What can you tell us about what, and you mentioned the population centers and density here. In your mind, what route should high-speed rail take in this country?
There's so many different potential routes. It's always going to be a matter of how much we're going to spend. If we have to build a bridge or a tunnel, it's going to cost a bit more. But again, quality is going to have to be the key here with the speed. So I think there's a lot of debate, and people are going to say, we should study this idea. There have been, Elias, and I'm not joking, 25 studies released since the 70s about this, and it's always come down to we don't feel like spending the money. So we know how to do it. Alstom came out with a study just last month where they proposed the route in all the big centers connecting Quebec and Toronto, saying if you take this route, you can connect the downtown cores of these cities and get the high-speed rail. So the more portions, if not all, that have high-speed rail, the better quality the ride is going to be, the smoother it's going to be, and the faster it's going to be. So I think we really have to be ambitious and say, let's just get this done already. We've been talking about it for so long. If we're going to spend money, spend good money and make it a game changer, because it could really be a game changer.
Craig, I have 30 seconds left for you here. I just want to know your motion tonight. You expect full support from Montreal City Council?
I spoke to the administration and they'll be voting in favor with a small amendment, but we're going to be loud and clear that we're in favor of high-speed rail. Montreal wants high-speed rail, so let's make it happen.
Let's hear as well from the rest of the country on something I think I'm in agreement we desperately need. Craig, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That's Craig Sauvé, Montreal City Councillor. And by the way, since this is a national edition of the Elias Macko Show, and I'm getting all of your text messages, 514-800 for your text messages about where you are and where you're listening from today, from Brampton, Etobicoke, Hamilton, by the way, Niagara. Everyone listening today, shoot me a text at 514-800 what you think about high-speed rail.